$350,000 of debt from med school. I have a family to feed. I just got to suck it up, and I have to work 110 hours this week. It's just, for me, it's restoring their body. We're not trying to turn you into someone you're not. We're trying to turn you to someone who you were.
What have you found now, like venturing on your own, to be kind of like your biggest challenges?
One of our tenets is really trying to deliver concierge level world-class service as a plastic surgery and spa practice.
What is this guy doing? Like, he's doing dances.
COVID hit, and now I'm like, I can't even operate. And so I really try to use that platform to educate.
You know, time away from family, etc. Like what's kind of the realities and the underbelly of your role? Dr. Chiddy, thank you for coming on the podcast. I think this is great. Taking time out of your weekend. It is a Saturday, so I appreciate that. So for our listeners, I think some things I want to note here. You're a super successful, board certified plastic surgeon. You just opened the Plastics Clinic and Spa in Draper. Huge building.
And not far from where we're at.
Right? Not far from where we're at. And you have 4?
Yeah, 4 surgeons.
Total surgeons there.
I'm surprised it took you that long to count to 4.
I was just trying to think of all the names.
At least you didn't have to use 2 hands.
Yeah, right.
4.
And then you just got another surgeon recently. Ton of growth. You're on social media a lot. So I want to dig into that. There's some things that I have some questions for sure. But tell us how you got started and what drove you to be a plastic surgeon. Like, this is such a unique thing that when kids are growing up, they're like, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a police officer, but like a plastic surgeon. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a story that I have to kind of look back and kind of try to look at like what got me from point A to point Z.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm at Z now, I don't know. Maybe at the end.
I love it's not. I love how it's not B because it's so far. It's like so
maybe
far away.
A to like P or something. Yeah. Oh, we'll go with O. Because no, I didn't. When I was younger, I didn't want to be. I didn't know about plastic surgery at all. I had no idea. But I did grow up overseas. So I lived in Saudi Arabia for most of my childhood, and I lived on a hospital compound. It's called Al Hada Royal Hospital. My dad was a dentist there, so he took a job there. A different adventure for the family. I was young. I have 3 younger sisters, and at the time I was around 6 or 7 years old when we went over there.
Oh, okay.
So I spent almost all of my like childhood that I remember in Saudi Arabia. We didn't come back here until I was like 13.
Oh, that's a long stay.
So when I was there, I lived on this hospital compound. You have to imagine there's like this walled-in complex. It's like an all-in-one city. You know, all the people that worked in the hospital, so the nursing staff, the maintenance people, the doctors, the surgeons, everyone, all the people that work in the cafeteria, everyone lived there pretty much. There were a couple other compounds where people were bussed in, but for the most part, they lived there in this compound. And same with the families of the physicians and the doctors and the dentists. My dad's a dentist. So we grew up there, and I went to international school. It was an American-based system. But all my friends were from all over the world, from Pakistan, India, Somalia, England, Australia, Canada.
Yeah. How cool, though.
Not really anybody from the U.S., to be honest. It was awesome. Just a huge melting pot there, different backgrounds, cultures, religions, beliefs. But for me, one thing that was in common was the medicine aspect of it. All of our parents were, one of my good friends, his dad was a neurosurgeon. My other friend's a cardiothoracic surgeon, cardiologist, And so I was and we'd run around the hospital and, run around, get in trouble because we weren't supposed to be in there.
Of course.
Just like,
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, that was like my life. The hospital kind of sat at the center. It looked like a big, almost like a donut, or I don't know, maybe it was a hexagonal shape. But in the middle was a mosque, because it's, Islam is obviously the dominant and only religion practiced in Saudi Arabia. And so, you hear prayer call, and that whole thing was just what I grew up with. But the one thing I took away from all that was, like, I wanted to do something to help people and serve people in a medical capacity, because it was just ingrained in me, it felt like. So we came back to the U.S. I did all my schooling. I met my wife, Mindy, in my junior year, And she asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said, I want to be a heart surgeon because it sounded cool.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
Like, hey, she might like this.
Yeah.
But I did. I was like, my friend's dad was a cardiothoracic surgeon. It just sounded so cool. Like,
Yeah.
saving people's lives.
That would be like a good pickup line. Be like, so that your heart's never broke.
Yeah, exactly.
Dating podcast now. Jeez.
So that's where it started. Was the idea of medicine was Saudi Arabia. But then as I was in high school, and then I went and served a 2-year mission for my church. When I came back from that, I realized I really want to do something like that. I pictured myself maybe doing business, doing architecture, 'cause I love art and other things, but I didn't really, couldn't think of anything else. So went up to the University of Utah, did my schooling there, all focused on like pre-med stuff, and loved it. Ended up graduating there. Then I stayed for medical school at the University of Utah. This whole time I'm thinking I want to be a heart surgeon.
Right.
But I'm like halfway through med school, and I'm doing research in cardiothoracic surgery, and I'm trying to realize I'm like, their lifestyle sucks. They're never home. It's super high stressful. Patients, the mortality rates are not low. People are dying from this because they're sick.
Right, not because of the physician itself, because of the type of things that you're dealing with.
Yeah, so I really had this moment where I'm like, I don't think I want to do this, But my wife's like, okay, it's kind of late. Like, we're almost
You've already
done.
put in this work and time.
You're more than halfway through med school. We're starting to get ready to take our step exams and prepare to apply for, residency.
Yeah.
And so I went to a job fair. They had, the University of Utah had a job fair where pretty much every specialty was there, had tables set up. And I just went to all the tables. I was like, what specialty am I picking? So I literally went to like internal medicine, anesthesia, psychiatry. I went to every table.
And how many years are you in at med school?
I'd already finished my first 2.5 years, so I was only a year and a half left.
Is that is it normal to be like? I guess my question is just like, as I think about it as a listener, like the thought of like, oh well, at what point during med school do I really have to like pick?
Lock down
is
a
that
decision.
like, is that normal to be at that point and
for
specialized?
Some people, a lot of people go into it thinking they know what they want and then change. So, but like a lot of my friends are like, oh, I'm orthopedic all the way, right? Orthopedic surgeon, and that's what they did. So they knew coming into it, and so they were starting research early on. So a lot of people know coming into it. But again, there are people like me who realize like, oh, I actually don't like this. And that's part of the reason of our third year we rotate on all the different, we do everything.
Okay, so it's pretty normal to...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is normal at that point to be like, oh, I don't want this. So I knew I wanted to do some type of surgery. So I went to all the tables, and I went to the plastic surgery table. And I remember Dr. Agarwal, she's actually still working up there. She was one of the plastic surgeons there talking about plastic surgery, and up to that point I'd only watched Grey's Anatomy, so I knew Dr. McSteamy.
All you knew that this weird stuff happened at the hospitals.
Yes, exactly. In the closets.
Yeah.
But all he, I'm like, all they do is rhinoplasty and breast augmentation, which is fine, but I just like, I don't want to do that. I'm pretty sure I have ADHD, like 100%. I'm like, I can't just be doing those 2 surgeries every day for my career.
Sure.
But I also realized heart surgery is the same thing. You're doing like bypasses, like that's pretty much it, And now things have changed. Anyway, so I went to that table, and the first thing Dr. Agarwal says is, she says, plastic surgery just isn't about boobs and rhinoplasty. So I was like, oh, it like intrigued me, because I'm like, that's all I knew, even as a med student at that point.
Right. That's all I mean, as a person who, same thing, like all I know about plastic surgery is what I consume online or through Hollywood, right?
Exactly. So it's definitely, it's glorified, it's sensationalized, whatever. But she said, we do a lot more than that. Like literally, it's a specialty. It's kind of, they call plastic surgeons the surgeon's surgeon. So, for example, a neurosurgeon, let's say there's, they have to do a craniotomy. Someone has a bleed in their head.
Yeah.
Emergency surgery, take off this part of the skull, freeze it, whatever, put in the fridge for a while, leave the skull off because there's brain swelling, right?
Yeah.
They have to cut through the scalp. Well, sometimes they have blood flow problems, and then that gets infected, and then they can't cover the brain. That's a huge problem.
Sure.
So they call a plastic surgeon to come in. Hey, can you cover this with healthy blood tissue with blood flow in it to cover that and protect the brain, help with an infection? Heart surgeon, let's say they get infection in a sternotomy. They cut the chest open, fix the heart.
Yeah.
That gets infected. Hardware's infected. Now they got open chest. Every time the person breathes, they got a flail chest. So now they ask us to come in and bring tissue to cover that wound, help it heal. So I was like, wow. I did, and orthopedic surgery, same thing. Lower extremity wounds. Alex Smith, a football player, you heard about his horrible leg injury. He had neck fascia. That's all plastic surgery.
Oh, wow.
He had all that tissue rearranged, moved from other parts of his body. And I started to realize, I'm like, holy cow, like this is a specialty where you're literally head to toe operating on patients. You work with all the other specialties, these other surgeons if you need to. You can do your own thing. We work on kids. We work on adults, any race, any gender. And I realized like there is nothing else like this. Like it really is the last like general surgery specialty, if you want to call it that.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, okay, that's what I want to do because I get bored easily.
Yeah.
And I love the artistic, creative side of it.
Mhm.
You know, if you look at plastic surgery, it's such an innovative field. A lot of the things that we do today, even transplant surgery, like kidney transplant, liver, all that started from a plastic surgeon in Boston.
Mm.
You know, and so I think plastic surgeons, face transplantation, hand transplant, that's all plastic surgeons. All the nerve repair, brachial plexus injuries. There's just so many cool things that's under plastics, even hand surgery. I did hand surgery specialty. And so that's what really latched on. I latched onto that in my third year. And then I just kind of switched gears, everything, and I focused on that. And I fell in love with it. And then it just brought me where I am today.
Wow.
Awesome.
I mean, let's talk a little bit about your journey then from there. Like, okay, so you graduate, you say, okay, I've decided I'm going to do plastic surgery. You take that specialization. I think most people will know that you do some sort of residency, but then what? Like, how did that work for you?
So there's different ways to get to become a plastic surgeon, a board certified plastic surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time now it's what's called an integrated plastic surgery residency. Like you said, so you finish 4 years of undergrad degree, your 4 years of medical school, you apply for residency during your third or fourth year of med school.
Mm-hmm.
Integrated plastic surgery means that you just go to one program, you spend 6 years there doing plastic surgery. We learn other things. We do ortho, we do neurosurgery, we rotate with all of them to get to know what they do, right? But that's a 6-year thing. The other path is you can actually do general surgery. So you go general surgery for 5 years, and then you do 3 more years of plastic surgery. So it's 8 years after it. So that's a little bit longer track. But that's, you can do that as well. So I did the integrated way. So I went to Southern California. I was in Loma Linda for 6 years.
Yeah.
Did all my plastics, loved it. But then I really thought I wanted to do hand surgery and specialize in that. So I'd done a lot of hand surgery and training.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to do 1 more year of a fellowship. So additional like specialty training. I didn't do it in breast stuff. I'd done a lot of breast surgery, all that in training. I felt comfortable with that. But hand, I actually thought I was going to be working at a hospital doing high-end, just crazy specialized hand surgery.
Right, like preparing Doctor Strange or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I watched that movie. It freaked me out. I'm like, bro, this is so wrong. You need a hand surgeon consultant on this movie. Anyway.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I did a residency. So that's 7 years after med school, including the fellowship, because it's a 1-year fellowship.
Wow.
And then from there, you can't get board certified yet. So you cannot get board certified while you're in training because you have to be accountable for your own patients. As a trainee, as a resident, as a fellow, you're still under we call it attending, right? Like an actual certified surgeon.
And they're the one who ultimately holds the responsibility and they take all the fault and whatever.
The
it's
glory
all
and the fault, the liability, the risk, but the rewards all on them. Yeah. So, but then I finished my training and then ended up coming back here. I joined a practice here locally. It was a private facial plastic surgeon in Salt Lake. And honestly, I didn't think we were going to come back here. I had several job offers to do hand surgery in Southern California. We loved Los Angeles. We were in South Pasadena. And, actually that was the year that the Dodgers were playing against the Astros in the World Series. Yeah. It was Halloween night. I remember we're in South Pasadena. It was just like it's the most American moment I think I could have experienced.
Yeah.
Right there. Every house had the TVs just blasting. And everyone just cheering. They beat the Astros that night, and then they end up losing the series. But it was so cool to be there. Like, we love this place. But then my mom was like, "Hey, can you come back to Utah, at least look for me? Like, my parents are here. It's just, and my wife's family's here. So I'm like, I'll do my due diligence. I'll at least look. But then I found something I really liked, and so we ended up coming back here. So now I've been here for almost 6 years. Actually, 6 years in August, this past August. So it goes by fast.
That's really cool.
Does.
What you touched on this a little bit. I want to go just a little bit further. What's the difference between having someone be board certified and not? Because I think that
Well, I was going to say like not only like what's the difference, but does it matter? Like, is it does everyone eventually have to become board certified, or do you just like I'm just like,
and should someone strive to be board certified? Is that like, I've made it, I'm board certified?
Like, as a third party, I look at it and I go like, oh, is this like an extra qualification thing that a person gets, like a certificate that's like stamp of approval? Or is it like, oh, after X number of years, like everyone eventually becomes board certified, and maybe it's not as prestigious as it maybe sounds on the outside?
Unfortunately, the term board certified has been really cluttered and muddied by actual board certified surgeons doing it. So they've created this term So yes, first off, board certification, when it's the proper board. So there's only like 27 subspecialty boards that are recognized by it's called the ABMS, American Board of Medical Specialties. So that's like the governing body over all like the residency training programs too, like the RRC. So they oversee like making sure me as a resident, when I graduate and become a plastic surgeon, not yet board certified, but that I've done the appropriate training to actually go out into the real world and operate on people on my own.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the first step. Is like, okay, he's done enough cases, enough exposure. He should be able to do that, he or she. However, that doesn't mean you're board certified. That's like, okay, that's the checkbox. You're done. But now, like I was saying earlier, it's the responsibilities on me as a surgeon to prove to the board of American Board of Plastic Surgery, who is overseen by the ABMS. So they oversee like pediatrics, family medicine, right? So when you hear board certified psychiatry, right? The ABMS says, okay, this is a legit board. Like this is the American Board of Plastic Surgery. They actually have the proper training. Yes, if you get board certified in this board, you should be proud of that.
Yeah.
That is that extra stamp that you are a safe surgeon. You've proven that you have the proper training. I mean, it doesn't prove your personality is great, right?
Sure.
About that later. You might be an a-hole, but you're a good surgeon.
You're good at your job.
Yeah. And so the American Board of Plastic Surgery, yes, like as soon as and it's one of the most rigorous ones to become certified. So as soon as I graduated fellowship, came out to practice, I have to do what's called a case collection. So every case I do, I have to document everything for the board. The patient's age, obviously they take out names and stuff, but patient age, what surgery did I do, any complications? And they want to know the complications. And I have to track these patients the whole 9 months.
Wow.
That I'm in my collection period.
Yeah.
And I have to do a certain number of cases. They have to be complex enough. I can't just do, 50 augmentations. I have to do 50 major cases. And so I did like 150 in my first 9 months.
Yeah.
So I had plenty of cases, hand surgery, facial, all that stuff. And then I submit all those to the board, and they review them, and they'll say, okay, we're going to pick 5 random cases out of all the ones you did in that 9 months. You now need to give us all the details. We need all the labs, all the imaging, all the notes you wrote, anything you discussed with the patient, any photos you took, all the consent signs, anything, how you build the patient, right? So it's all about ethics. It's about, did you do the right thing? They want to see your decision-making process. Then I have to go with those 5 cases, and actually Dr. Pfeiffer, my partner's going next week or 2 weeks to do his in Arizona. We sit down in front of all these other plastic surgeons who've been doing it for 20, 30 years, and they just grill us. They open our case books and say, okay, on this date you did this. Why did you do that?
How stressful.
It's like
Oh my
PTSD.
gosh.
I think of that hotel down there in Scottsdale, and I lose my mind. But they do that. I mean, they want to make sure like you're safe for your patients, and that you're not going to go out there and do bad things to your patients surgically. So you go through all of that, and then they come back and say, okay, you're board certified, and then you pay money, and then you have to keep renewing your education. You have to prove that every year that you're still being safe. You still submit cases every few years. They biopsy, what you're doing. And so it really is a mark of showing that, yeah, you're a safe surgeon. You have the proper training. So it is huge. And the reason why that matters is because as a plastic surgeon, let's say I finish my training and I don't get board certified. You only have a certain number of years after you get out of training. I think it's 7 or 8 years that you can actually sit for your boards. If you don't do it in that time frame, you can never do it.
Oh, really?
Yes. And then every hospital, if you want to have what we call privileges at a hospital, let's say I have a patient that, I don't know, let's say, God, heaven forbid, something happens after surgery. I don't know, they have a blood clot in their lungs or they start bleeding.
Yeah.
I want to admit them to the hospital. To get admitting privileges at a hospital or to even operate at a hospital, they are run by pretty much by the CMS, right?
Yeah,
so
CMS.
Medicare, Medicaid, they oversee making sure the hospitals are doing the right thing. JCO, all these places make sure, and that trickles down to the surgeons. They only let surgeons operate a hospital if they're board certified in their specialty.
Wow.
So if you don't get board certified, you can then not have hospital privileges. You can then not admit patients. And I'll tell you right now, when I first came back to Utah, there's a lot of not a lot, but there are some non-board certified plastic surgeons. But there's a lot of non-plastic surgeons doing plastic surgery that have complications. And then when I was on call, they'd be coming into the hospital, and that surgeon that did it can't come in and help them. So now I'm trying to save their patient's life because they're bleeding to death. These things happen. And again, they're not board certified, and the hospital will never let them. So one of the things I tell patients is, look, if you have, like I said earlier, it's like kind of muddied, right? Like people claim they're board certified. There's actually been a lot of legal stuff around this, even in Utah.
Interesting.
It's actually illegal for any surgeon to claim they're board certified in a specialty that they're not board certified in, right? So they have to specify. So if I'm an oral surgeon, I'd say I'm a board certified oral surgeon. in oral surgery. I can't just say board certified and then advertise that I'm doing mommy makeovers, because guess what? Oral surgeons don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? But they're going to claim they're board certified. So that's
so wait,
a
so
huge
I want to
problem.
clarify on that. So you're saying like if they're board certified in oral surgery, they have to specifically say
Call out oral
surgery is what
surgery.
you're board certified in.
Yes.
So if you were to get board certified, it always is in a specialty.
Yeah.
So you-
yes, because there's those 27 or whatever
Okay.
specialties, right? Subspecialties. The problem is, and those are just the recognized ones. So now there's been a lot of boards that have come in over the years that are just made up boards. They come up with a name, American Board of Cosmetic Surgery, American Board of whatever. There's just so many boards that aren't recognized by ABMS.
Right.
But then they'll certify a surgeon who didn't train in plastic surgery, right? Maybe they did family medicine or something, and then now they took a course, and now they say, oh, I'm doing liposuction now.
Yeah.
So I'm board certified. I'm a board certified, in this thing that I paid to be in. I'm board certified. So that's where it was confusing people. And then there's actually mortalities and people dying.
Oh, wow. Well,
And this is all over the news a couple of years ago of someone who did that locally.
Crazy.
It's a problem, and people don't know about it. So yes, when you ask about board certification, it really matters. And that's one thing for me. I try to use my platform is to inform patients. I don't care if patients come to me. I want them to at least go to a board certified plastic surgeon who
the correct board.
the correct
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me the main thing, and I'm a huge advocate for that. I work with the American Society of Plastic Surgeons on helping, with promoting all that, and I'm on different committees there. But it does make a difference because it's having the proper training. I tell people all the time, and here's what gets weird too. If I have my own surgery room in my office,
Yeah.
right, the state cannot really do anything about it. If I have one OR, I can do whatever I want. I can actually do brain surgery, or I could do open heart surgery in my office. If you trusted me to do it, Colton,
Sure.
I can say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and I'll fix your, your coronaries or something, right? We could do that. I don't think it's going to be a good
Take my
outcome.
money.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what's happening now. It's like, well, I'm fine. I can do your breast augmentation in my office, because the government doesn't really regulate that. And you don't have to get that licensed, But then if you have 2 ORs or more, now the state comes in and is like, you can't be running a surgery center like the one we have.
Yeah.
We have 5 ORs. We had to get that all licensed from the state. It has to be legit. Again, we have to have everybody with their certifications and stuff. But yeah, so people don't know this. And so they're doing things in back offices and getting away with this stuff because I think, especially in plastic surgery, it's like no one's out there. Like, I'm not dying to go do brain surgery on people, right? Because the risk is so much higher than the reward probably if you're thinking financially. But when you look at plastic surgery, a lot of people say, oh, like I could do a breast augmentation and make a lot of money off this, right? And so that's where, or liposuction or all these things. And that's where it gets gray and it's just not well defined. It doesn't really regulate it well. It's dangerous for patients.
Yeah.
I can appreciate as a consumer the level of rigor,
Yeah.
right, that is required to be able to say, oh, no, knowing that there is a bar and that bar is high, right? I can appreciate that, knowing that. So, yeah, I don't know. That's
I think it's
didn't know
really
that.
cool that, like, so if any listeners or viewers of this, it's like, hey, if I want to be in the medical field and be in a specialty and I want to be board certified to build that credibility, like knowing that they have to look for being certified by a board within the ABMS.
Yep.
And then, so I think that's kind of the takeaway here. And some very interesting, like, the medical world is so foreign to me. Like, it's just like right over my head.
But but it's also like, if you're planning on getting any sort of
You have to
plastic
be familiar
surgery,
with it a little
make
bit,
sure
right?
you check for the right certification.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go to abplasticsurgery.org. You can go to plasticsurgery.org. I talk about this on social media all the time. You can type in the name of people. It's funny. I was teasing someone the other day. I was like, if you type my name in on the website, if you don't type in Jeremy, because my real name's Jeremy. I've never gone by Jeremy. I go by Jerry. So a lot of people just type in Jerry. I'm like, oh, it's weird. It doesn't pull up. They're like, oh, he's not certified. But you have to type in my full name. So I'm like, make sure you type in Jeremy. I promise I'm on there.
I'm on there. I swear.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, they need a alias column
They
to be
know. They need
allowed
like a little
to-
parentheses,
Yeah.
AKA
what their real
Dr.
name is, what
Chiddy.
they go by. Yeah.
I think one thing I want to get into is your presence on social media. So I think, talking to my wife, she's had 3 girls. She is kind of at the point where we're done having kids. And she's like, I want to have a mommy makeover. I just want to get I want that confidence back. And I know that's something that you plug a lot, is like helping moms or women get that confidence back on their bodies. And I think that's awesome. You do a number of things. You talked about like hands, rhinoplasties, breast augmentations, etc. in doing so, I found out about you via like TikTok videos on Instagram. And I was like, what is this guy doing? Like he's doing dances and like it's super entertaining. But I had to ask her, like, he's a plastic surgeon? Like what? And so I think in my mind it was, you've exploded, right? I feel like you've done an amazing job here with your marketing and everything, that you took within an industry where that wasn't the norm of posting all these things and your tactics and approaching and putting facts and whatever, to now this is part of like a very key element for your success and people knowing about who you are. Like you do trainings. Like I've seen you go around and like you're training other doctors and whatever else, like why social media is important. What made you decide to dive into social media to try to push the things that you're doing and highlighting mommy takeovers and everything else?
It's so funny because when I was, I remember downloading Instagram back in 2000 and whatever it was, 7, 8. I remember it just to get some filters, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm going to post this on Facebook. I'm going to like filter this on Instagram. No one's looking at that, but I'm going to go put it on Facebook because it's a cool photo.
Yeah. Right.
And I remember using Instagram originally. And then through training, I do like foodie posts because I love food in LA. And like I want to create a diary of like food that I really liked in
Plus
LA.
you're in LA and the food is great.
It's
in LA.
amazing.
Yeah.
So I had this like taste bud surgeon account that I would post on. And so I started using it more for that, you know. And then when I got into fellowship in LA, my wife was doing a lot of this Saint makeup stuff. At the time it was Mascara was the company. And so she was starting to use Instagram stories. And it was pretty new, this whole stories thing. And I was like, what are you doing over there? You know, and I would like help her actually set up a camera. We'd like actually legit set up cameras, record, and then she'd go post it on there. You know, we just didn't know how to use it. And I didn't even want to touch that stuff because I was just busy with whatever I was doing. And she actually just wanted to show me how to do Instagram stories.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I just filmed a short thing, I think I filmed like 6, 7 times. I was like, this is so embarrassing to me.
Yeah.
You know, my face looks
talking to yourself.
weird because it's, you know, fisheye or wide angle lens.
Yeah.
So honestly, like at the beginning, I just was not into it, you know. And then when I came here, I realized like I had no like way of really making myself known. And I knew there was a couple surgeons in LA that were started that like Dr. Sheila Nazarian. No, she was the model surgeon. She used Instagram was starting, and people were starting to blow up on there using that platform. There's a couple of surgeons, but no one else is really using it because everyone was really afraid that the board would get mad at them. And I remember even like, they're not going to let you pass because they're going to think you're unethical for, like you said, is this not professional? You're not representing our specialty, all this stuff, right?
Has that happened before where the board gets mad about something? And
Oh,
like,
yeah, they totally could. Yeah, if you don't abide by the code of ethics, which is pretty defined. I mean, the one thing about the code of ethics, and I brought this up, I actually gave a talk in San Diego at our national meeting a couple months ago about ethics in social media. And like, we need to actually readdress this as a society because there's a lot of things that we don't talk about, like giving away free surgery to advertise, you know, your practice. Like, I've never done that, but there are surgeons even locally who are giving away free surgery to like these kind of celebrities so that they can get more patients. You know, and so I'm like, that's not even actually in our code, but it says we can't really give away surgery. So there's like all these ethical things that are in the background. I'm like, we should talk about this more. And I'm not saying this should be one way or the other, but we all need to come to a consensus. You know?
Right, because it is a gray space. Whenever you talk about ethics, there's always like, you know, how you. It's not as easy as drawing a hard line on things like, oh, when you bill patients, bill accurately. That's a really easy. Well, you know, maybe it's not. But it is easier to draw hard lines on some of those things as opposed to ethics.
So at least social media for me, like, I was like, I have no way of really getting my name and my brand out there, you know, and it's brand new. I didn't have any funds. I couldn't put up a billboard. I couldn't afford to go on a radio station, all these things, you know, and I didn't know how to advertise it. And like, I didn't train here. So I had some family and friends, but like those people come in and see you for surgery in the first 2 months and then they're gone, you know, like you're done.
Yeah.
Like, there's nobody else just flowing in. So it's like, how do I do that? And I had time in my hands, and then so I started just posting befores and afters, and the practice that I was at, they already been kind of doing that. And so I think that's really what got me into it. And then I just had fun with doing educational stuff.
Yeah.
The TikTok, though, I didn't download to 2019, so it was pretty early. It was before COVID. And I did it because I would do these dance battles with a couple of our nurses and staff at my office on Fridays. We do dance battles in the lobby. And we record it, you know, but it wasn't on Instagram. It's because you can't really use the music back then, right? It was just like we record it and then we post it. Well, then someone had told me about TikTok, and they said you could take that song and you could actually play it while you're recording. I'm like, what? And like for me, I grew up breakdancing. I love to dance. Like this is me. Like this is not new for me. I've been breakdancing since I was like 15, and I love dancing. I just love rhythm, and I love that. And so
That's cool.
I remember the first one I did was a dance battle with someone I knew, and it was like to the Snoop Dogg song, one of the Snoop Dogg songs, "Drop It Like It's Hot."
Yeah,
you know,
a
that's
classic.
Yes.
And I was just hooked at that point. And then I just started just doing. And it was before there's really like trends and challenges.
Yeah.
But like I just started using TikTok, and so I was pretty early on, and then COVID hit, and now I'm like I can't even operate, and so I really tried to use that platform to educate, and then I did more dancing, and then people were like, oh, you're the TikTok surgeon, dancing surgeon, all this stuff, and that's where it kind of took off, and I'm like, hey, we have this platform where we can actually educate people. And my mind, started changing a little bit. I was like, well, if we can have this reach, we can actually educate people on plastic surgery, talk about mommy makeovers, talk about empowering women, and really show like the difference it can make in women's lives. And so that's where I've watched myself kind of evolve over the years and how I use the platform.
Yeah.
I think of like, some of the actors in Hollywood who's like Will Smith, like starts out like in comedy and does like a serious role.
Yeah.
Like I Am Legend, and then
Right.
kind of does like all these, so like, I feel like that's me. Like I started out kind of less serious, because that's me, and I still am less serious sometimes, but really now I think I've kind of matured a little bit, and I've tried to evolve a little bit how I use the platform, but I still love to dance. So
Yeah.
that's never gone away.
That's awesome.
You can't take the break out of the dancer. I don't know. I just made that up.
That's good.
The
I
break
don't
out of the dance.
Well, there's definitely some moves I can't do anymore.
Yeah,
so some
that
of the
is
break
true.
is gone. Well, actually, you can put the break.
We can put
in
the
my
break
bag.
into
break
the
back.
dancer.
Doesn't
Yeah. feel
That
good.
is true. As you get older, I've definitely been feeling that. I know we're here talking about downloading Instagram for the first time in the early 2000s. So anyone out there can pretty much figure out how old we all are.
Yeah.
They can calculate pretty easily.
Yeah. I'm interested, Lo, thinking about that. Okay, so one of the things we also like to ask people is about like going back in time. Like if you had the ability to go back and talk to, little Chiddy before, maybe in Saudi Arabia or even whatever, maybe when you were younger, just to give any sort of advice about either, taking different steps that would have accelerated, improved, or whatever it is you are to get to your career, or even if you were like, hey, maybe there's something else you would have done differently. Like what would you go back and say to younger you?
When I look back, I don't know if I would do anything different.
Aside from buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Hello.
Oh,
Man. Or even invest in Apple.
Yeah.
Steve
Yeah.
Jobs came back.
Sure.
Goodness.
I don't know if I'd do anything differently, because I only feel like I'm here today because of the experiences, good or bad, that I've had. And like even starting my own practice in 2020, the experience I had prior to that when I joined the other practice, like that was all learning for me, I feel like. And I think, you can take a perspective. So this is something I would tell my younger self, but I think you can take a positive spin or optimistic perspective on any situation.
Yeah.
Regardless of how horrible it looks at the time, because there were some moments where I was like, it's not going to work. It was 2020, it's January. I didn't know the COVID was going to hit. I literally had no money. I started my own little practice with a few employees, and then that hits and I can't operate. It's like I'm literally, my hands are tied. And so I remember luckily I got the PPP loan, and I told my staff, like, please stay, like I will pay you.
Yeah.
Let's work. And that's when we started doing virtual consults, and everybody else shut down. Everybody literally like furloughed their employees, took a break. I'm like, I can't, like, this is my livelihood. I have 3 kids.
Yeah.
And so I was taking call. I was still doing trauma call. People were still getting hurt and stuff.
And the need for healthcare didn't stop.
Yeah. But the elective stuff did. So I was doing all that, and then we came back, just hit it hard in May, and it just took off. But but I look at that, and that was really hard times. Like, there's nights you just you're not sleeping because you're like, man, I don't know what I'm gonna do for my family, And so I think a lot of people are like, oh, you built this nice place, all this stuff, but like people don't see the day-to-day grind,
Right.
and the stress and sorry,
You're good.
the heartache that was behind all that.
Yeah.
And it's easy to look on the surface and say, oh my gosh, like he's this dancer stuff. But, I feel like I'm a little more complex than that. I've been through a lot more. But again, I don't put a lot of that out there. I'm very selective in what I do, and I'm conscious of it. But I am myself. Like people meet me like, oh yeah, you're this same person as, that I see on there.
Yeah,
but I'm just
sure.
not physically dancing right now. But I would tell myself, like everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, and I made a decision when I was young because of an experience I had. I was telling my daughter about this experience the other day. We were in the car together, but I had experience when I was around 10 years old where I learned that, like, for me, being inclusive of everyone is the most important thing.
Yeah.
In my mind, never discriminating, never leaving people out of a situation. If you feel like they should be there, and be inclusive, being kind to people. And I just talked to my daughter about that. But at the same time, I think I would tell myself, like, you can be kind and nice to everyone, but you don't have to be friends and trust everyone. Right. And I think that's something I've learned as an adult is there are people who just want to take advantage of you. And it's the sad truth, and it's hard to learn that, and you don't want to accept that, but there are just people out there that are just not nice.
Yeah.
They don't have your best intent, best things in mind, unfortunately.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to continue to hope for good because if, you get ran over and used, there's those scars, right? Yeah. I'm curious, what was the leap from working for someone to working for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, there's actually things I can't talk about
Sure.
specifically from why I leapt over. But what I would say is that one thing I never learned in residency, in medical school, in high school, was when you look at business, there's this whole, realm and field of business culture, right? Like the way that businesses are run, what are the fundamental beliefs? Like what are, what is it as a business you're trying to achieve? I'm not talking the vision, but like the day-to-day, like how do we run our business culture?
Sure.
And is that culture something that you align with personally?
Yeah.
And I, as a resident, I think the reason why is because as a resident and a fellow, they make it out like you're lucky to be here. They look at you every day and it's like, you're lucky to have a job. There was 300 other plastic surgery candidates. We picked you. You better stay here and do what we tell you to do. Like that's the mentality. It's very like militant. It's very like paternalistic. It's like, this is what you're doing, right? And you become just submissive throughout your training, and you see people who aren't that way and they somehow get kicked out or something happens, right?
Yeah.
So it's just this like constant threat of losing your job. And you're like, I'm in, $350,000 of debt from med school. I have a family to feed. I just got to suck it up and I have to work 110 hours this week. Because if I say something about it, I might lose my job.
And then what do you do?
What?
Right. You just spend all that time and money and effort for what?
And so that's what's ingrained in us. And then when you come out, whether you work in a hospital or in another practice, I unfortunately I think that mentality doesn't go away. And a lot of that culture gets spilled over into private practice.
Interesting.
So for me, it took me a year and a half or so to realize, like, because at first I was afraid. I'm like, I don't have the capability or the knowledge to run my own business. I was afraid. You know, and that was probably the main thing, was fear from the beginning. Otherwise, I probably would have started my own thing. But
Sure.
It took me a year and a half to realize, like, I was capable of doing it with the proper help. And I think one thing I always tell people is, like, I don't know what I don't know, but I do know there's a lot that I don't know. So, but finding the right people to help me run a business and stuff, I think that's why I've been successful, because I don't rely on myself to do everything. I don't like to think I have that ego where I'm like, I can do it all. And I think a lot of us as surgeons, I could do surgery. Why, of course I can keep people alive. Why can't I run a business? That's easy, right?
Right.
That's the downfall, is it's not easy. It's hard as surgery, but in a different way, So I think, but once I realized that, and I found that my culture and what I wanted to have on a day-to-day in my own business didn't align with what I was experiencing.
Sure.
And so that was one of the reasons I can talk about why I left. And again, it was scary, but I had one of my good friends from high school, Tyler Mitchell. He's in the military. He's in the Army. He's pretty high up in rank, but he's done a lot of leadership training. And he's got all these certifications in like business culture and leadership, emotional intelligence training, all that stuff. And I had time during COVID, I wasn't operating. I was either doing TikToks or I was in the ER. So he's like, hey, let's come together. And he he taught me a lot of really cool stuff that I use today even, and a lot of it had to do with business culture and establishing our cultural foundations as a practice and what we believe in. And then really, I think the reason we're successful is because we live and die by that culture. And we attract the people, not just our staff, but patients who I think see that culture through our social media or through what we do in our business.
if you could summarize, like what are like is the what would you kind of like outline your either culture or values that you kind of hold there in your organization?
So we have it like posted up. Well, we used to have it in our old office, and we haven't put it up yet in our new one. But yeah, we have a ton of, there's kind of all these foundations that we came up with. And actually came up with them because my friend Tyler was like, well, what do you want your foundation to be? I'm like, dude, I don't even know what you're talking about. What is, like,
Yo,
what is
foundations, pay my bills, don't go out of business, keep people alive. Is that
Have fun doing it.
Yeah. Well, he was like, okay, well, what didn't work for you at the other place? So I gave him a list of what didn't work. He's like, okay, let's at least start with the opposite of those.
Yeah.
So things like, giving open and honest feedback. Like for me, like with my patients and with our staff, like it's such a huge thing to, if there's something that needs to be timely said and done, like we do it, and that's our culture. We don't know the passive aggressiveness to me is like the word. It's like, the business killer. So you just have to be forward, and you can't take it personal. This is business, so we're, direct with our we attempt to be direct with our communication, but we give good feedback. And, I think we're constantly looking for ways to change and innovate. Let's see. Always, I think one of our tenets is really trying to deliver concierge level world-class service as a plastic surgery and spa practice. And so, we really want to elevate that experience for our patients and for our staff. I mean, if you go through our building, our new location, and we really even constructed that place as best as we could to give our staff the feeling like they're important to us too.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Our break room is the biggest room in our spa and our clinic.
Oh, interesting.
It's the best view. It looks over the valley. It's just a really nice place to come in and just, take your break. You get a break, right? You got to enjoy it. And, at Disneyland, with a lot of inspiration we took from Disneyland, because my wife and I love Disneyland.
Yeah.
But it's all about the experience, right? But I feel like Disneyland does one thing where like their back rooms and the back side of the facade is all like just kind of like just whatever, right?
Yeah.
And we took a little bit different approach. Like, well, like we want our staff also to enjoy like where they're at, and so it's a little different. But I would say those are the kind of the main things in our culture. And I think, like I said, there's like 20 things, but those are things that stand out to me the most.
Going to your new building, it honestly feels like I'm walking to like a 5-star hotel.
Oh,
like it's super nice, and you get treated very, very, very well. So I think you setting those 20 things, but then also talking to anyone from the person greeting you at the desk all the way to whatever surgeon you're going to have a consult with, and all the people who are talking to you in between. It's you kind of feel like you're getting pampered, right? It's that special experience. So I think it's really cool. You've done a good job there.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, what have you found now? Like venturing on your own to be kind of like your biggest challenges? Because I mean, you talked about business a little bit, which they clearly don't teach you in medical school.
No.
They're like, we focus on
medical stuff.
Yeah, we focus on the medical stuff. We focus on the craft. And then you get out and like, it's like, oh yeah, you don't know how to keep a ledger.
Exactly.
So it's like, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced? And I mean, I'm curious, like, is it difficult to like build and create that sort of culture that is like continues to exist and grows as you run the business?
It's definitely an organic thing that you're talking about, just in terms of the business culture and everything. It's a constantly evolving thing. So we add foundations all the time, but I would say one of the biggest challenges, because, sure, like we feel very blessed and we have a very busy practice. So, patient acquisition and getting people in the door, for a lot of practices, that's their main thing, right? And so a lot of marketing is spent, a lot of research and stuff. We have the way that we do things and it works now. But for me, the biggest challenge is stagnation. Like I never want to be stagnant or, just rest on your laurels. Like to me, that is the scariest thing. And so I'm even my social media, like constantly, like I don't do the same thing as I did even a few months ago. And I treat surgery that way. I don't do the same breast augmentation surgery I did even 6 months ago and 6 months before that. I'm constantly trying to evolve because I don't want to be stagnant.
Right.
Because I feel like if I am, then I'm falling behind. Not that I'm comparing myself to anybody else, but in terms of what we're trying to deliver to patients, we're not delivering the best 5-star experience. So to me, that's one of the biggest challenges is like, how do we continue to improve, right? It's like, how do we know what rocks need to be turned over that it's hiding something or that we need to fix?
Yeah.
And to me, that's the scariest thing in terms of business. It's like you don't know what you don't know. So if you're not looking in a certain corner or, of your business and you're going to find that, you're hemorrhaging money somewhere or something. Luckily, that's not the case. But there's always things that I feel like we need to do better.
Yeah.
And so It's constantly getting feedback like we talked about, but it's also acting on that feedback. And I think that's a huge challenge too, right? Like you can come up with all the answers in the world, but if you don't actually carry them out and then, get the feedback on if it worked or not, you're not going to know if you're improving or changing.
Talking about not being stagnant, I think there's some obvious answers. Anyone who is familiar with someone in the medical field, it's like you go do X amount of hours every year, you learn new practices, new methods, whatever. What are things that, and especially staying up on your certification, right? What are the things that you do as a plastic surgeon to continue to educate yourself and stay up on the latest practices and make sure that the board is happy with your practices?
Yeah. So first off, we have to have a certain number of CME, they call it continuing medical education, to stay board certified. And it's a lot. So you get hundreds of hours every couple of years. And, each conference is maybe 20 hours, right? It's like 2-3 days, but you have to go to those talks and everything. So that's one of the main things I enjoy doing is going out to conferences annually and multiple times a year, actually, because there's all these different conferences. There's aesthetic conferences. There's conferences that are more just general plastic surgery. And I give talks at a lot of them too. So it's a good reason for me to go because actually I'm also educating as well. So typically I'm going and giving a few talks. Like in September, I told you I give 5 talks, and they're all, one was on subfascial breast augmentation and tissue preservation. One was on social media, ethics in social media. One was on shadow banning. One was on, actually we did a whole paper. I worked with a group out at Harvard at Beth Israel on shadow banning, but actually amongst plastic surgeons. So we're actually looking into really what's happening on the social media side with plastic surgery. Our accounts are being suppressed while others who are promoting plastic surgery in a different light are being promoted. We're trying to educate, but we're being kind of suppressed. So we collected a bunch of data and found some significant data on that amongst surgeons. So we presented that. I talked a lot about, and so a lot of my stuff, again, is feedback to myself. I have a group of awesome pre-med students that we went through like thousands of patients that I've done in the last 5 years, but looked at all these cases that we've done in the breast, and then I presented that work at this meeting. So for me, not just educating, but learning and listening to other surgeons is one of the biggest ways, because then I can always reassess what I'm doing and seeing if, so I look at my own work and say, okay, where can I improve? Then I look at others' work and say, okay, what are they doing that I could do better, right? Yeah. And so that's what works most for me. And then honestly, I also have like several WhatsApp groups. Like I'm on with all these different plastic surgeon friends, and we talk all the time. We ask each other like, what would you do on this case? And so we're just constantly like, trying to help each other. And I love that aspect of the plastic surgery community. It's very small. There's not a lot of plastic surgeons in the U.S.,
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a tighter community.
Do the hours that are put towards you presenting, does that count towards your educational hours?
Yeah, because it's under the umbrella of the meeting itself. So typically they'll say, well, yeah, you presented. I don't get extra for that, but obviously that counts that session. And so
we'll go to a little bit more of a lighter question. Well, I guess it could be heavy.
Oh,
how you take it.
Now I'm worried about what this is. Did we talk about this question
What's
before?
kind of like the yes. What's kind of like the underbelly or the things that people don't know about? Either you could take the route of being a plastic surgeon or just being in the medical field with all the hours, time away from family, etc. Like what's kind of the realities and the underbelly of your role?
Because I mean, to add to that, like I think to some degree, plastic surgery is a little bit glorified. Like there is it's slightly categorized differently in the eyes of the public compared to other types of medical fields, and they're like, oh well, they're like, the divas of the I don't know they call it. Again, I'm a third party, right? I'm a third party looking in and saying, oh well, the plastic surgeons are definitely the divas or whatever it is. Like
I mean, definitely when you think of it that way, I think a lot of that's because of honestly Hollywood and what's been portrayed on TV, right? Just this glorification of plastic surgery because it's so like outright. Like no one's glorifying like a really cool like if you put the bones back together in the leg, the tibia's just perfectly repaired. No one sees that.
Sure.
Great. Like, you put a bunch of ortho X-rays up. That's not sexy.
Yeah.
For orthos, I think hands is cool.
You're
but
like, ooh,
sure.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at all just medicine in general, and then you categorize surgery, like you hear neurosurgeon like, oh yeah, they're super smart, and this is like high intense stuff, cardiothoracic, right? Vascular surgeons, ortho, and plastics. And so you definitely get that kind of labeling, but. I mean, the reality of it is yes, plastic surgery is a very competitive field to get into, and probably more so because there is that opportunity to go out into private practice, right? Like, you know, as like, I don't know, internal medicine doctor or like a rheumatologist or something like that. It's hard to just go on your own and do your own thing because you're reliant upon insurance to bill.
Right.
And then you're usually, you know, to bill insurance to make it effective for you, you probably got to have high volume. So now you got to probably have 3 or 4 or 5 rheumatologists in your group. And so it really just doesn't loan itself to being private. Now you can, but it's just less likely, right? Or a radiologist out there on his own just doing CT scans in his office. Like, that's not going to happen. Plastic surgeon doing Botox and lipo, yeah, it can happen. So there's a draw to that, but it makes it much more competitive in that way, right? Just like dermatology is because of the hours and it's,
Yeah.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff like that, but I think a lot of things we don't. Sorry.
You're good.
I talk a lot. I talk all day because of my clinic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Sorry, and then you come here and we're
I'll
drilling
be-
you with questions.
No, I'll be in the middle of like talking to a patient, and all of a sudden this happens to my voice. I'm like, okay, it's been 6 hours I've been talking. My staff knows right away. They'll run and grab water and bring it. So nice.
Good job, staff.
Yeah. But I think some things we don't talk about in plastic surgery and just medicine in general, like you asked about, is it's a sacrifice of time in probably the prime of your life. Meaning your sacrifice, like there's opportunity cost loss, right? Like
Right.
you go to medical school, you're undergrad, you're not making money. Maybe you have a side gig, you know, it's fine.
Yeah, but it's not a lot.
Not a lot. Now you're in medical school. They do not let you work outside of medical school. You could go get a secret job, maybe in a research lab or I don't know, but they don't let you. They find out, they're like, no, you know, like you're toast pretty much. So now you're paying them to be there. You're paying hundreds of $1,000s a year for 4 years to go to a program. Some people are in debt, almost $1 million coming out of med school nowadays, you know, just for med school. Because they say, oh, it's an investment for you because you're going to make all this money, right? If you actually break it down, like people have said, like if you look from the time a person wants to become, let's say, a school teacher, because they say they go through their college, they get their degree, they start teaching, you know, they put time together, and then certain types of doctors will actually make less than a teacher over the same time of life. Now, a doctor will make a lot more, right? As soon as they get out in residency, relatively speaking, though, now their salary goes up, but they have all that debt to worry about. They have all that time lost where they could have probably actually made money.
Yeah.
And so if you look at it, certain specialties in medicine actually make what a teacher does in the same amount of time, which is you know, no one thinks of that.
Yeah.
But there's also the time sacrifice, which you can't put a value on that in my
Right.
mind, you know. And I think I was talking to my wife just about Halloween the other, because it's Halloween, and my wife's like, you know, I wasn't there for Halloween for my kids for almost every year. I think the first year I dressed up as Mario. That's why, because I was Mario and we were Princess Peach this last Halloween. So we were
They were
joking.
good costumes.
Yeah. My wife's like a cosplay. I was like, I found it on Amazon.
Yeah.
It was really good. But that's what we did when I was an intern. I remember that. And then I never dressed up ever again, you know, for the next like 6 years. And because I was never home.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's this whole sacrifice of time, and not just in plastic surgery, but any residence in a surgical specialty. It's heavy, and that's time I'll never get back with my kids. And luckily my kids were young, but you know, I definitely think there's some regret to that in my mind, you know. And so any moment I had, I would spend with them, and I don't think my kids, you know, look at it differently because you know, I was there when I could be. But that's hard, and people don't see that. Like I said earlier, it's like you see on the surface, you see that, oh, he's doing TikToks, and he's posting befores and afters of, you know, moms or whatever it is. But it's like, to get to this point and to become the surgeon I am today and the person I am today, there's a lot of sacrifice. And I don't expect anybody to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry at all. But it's just, maybe it helps give people a little more understanding and a glimpse of what it takes, I think, the sacrifice it takes to get to this point.
Yeah.
You know,
It was a choice you made. You thought you understood the consequences of it. You made those choices, and you know, it's the trade-off, right?
Yeah. And I don't regret anything, you know. Like I said earlier, I don't think I would change anything, and I don't regret anything. Now, would I recommend, you know, to my kids to be a plastic surgeon? I don't know. Like, if you're interested, you know, I'd support you, but I would never like be like, oh, family expectation, you become a plastic surgeon, because it's hard, you know. And not that I don't want my kids to go through hard things and people, but like, there's other things you could do, and I think be very fulfilled in life. Right. And not have to go through all that sacrifice and the stress and all that.
Yeah. And if you don't have the own inner drive and passion or whatever it is that will get you through those hard times, then you're really just, you know, it's better that you find if you're gonna go through hard times, it should be the ones you want to go through, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Well, big kudos to Mindy, your wife, right? That she's been a tremendous support throughout all this, right? I think like there's been some videos and stuff that I've seen. It's like this girl's awesome. She's cool too.
I don't know if the partners of physicians get as much kudos
She's
as they
amazing.
should. So.
Yeah, honestly, this would not have been possible without her. Like, I 100% tell everyone that. You know, and again, like, I'm here on my account and people see my social, but really she's there propping me up and has helped me to get to this point. I don't think I would have been the same person. You know, I've known her since we were 17.
Yeah.
Even before that. And we've dated since we were juniors in high school and got married when, 22 and been married for almost 21 years. And I don't think I could have done it with anybody else, honestly. I don't think anybody else would have put up with me. That's probably
the patience.
Ooh, yeah.
I think one last question for me is, how do you, as a plastic surgeon, being in Utah, we've mentioned a few times like the perception that Hollywood gives about plastic surgery and kind of like the stigma behind that, right? Someone says, "Oh, I want plastic surgery done." It's like, "Oh, you just want bigger boobs," or you want to. You see these other celebrities that get way too much, and it's like, "Holy cow!" Okay, like that's plastic surgery sometimes. How do you combat what is perceived to the public eye, and then also being in a place where religious views also can impact that on the outlook of plastic surgery? Like, what do you do there, and how do you handle that, or even balance it?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at my practice, it's really focused on, like you mentioned, the mommy takeover, right? Like really moms getting their bodies back with sacrificing their own body for raising sometimes 3-5 kids, right?
Yeah.
And I think, when you bring in that aspect of it where, sure, there's a Hollywood side of things where it's like overdone and, there's just like perception drift by these people and they're just doing weird things.
Yeah.
To women who are like, I just want to have a body that I feel comfortable in and confident in again. It's not about, most of my patients, maybe they get breast implants, but guess what? It's because their breasts are deflated. They're just skin. And they're like, I just want to look like normal. And a lot of women in Utah, what I've found is that, they start having kids very early on. Like they spend their prime, right? Like their adult primehood is like in their 20s and they're pregnant the whole time.
Yeah.
And then by the time they're done breastfeeding, pregnancy, raising kids, they're they're in their 30s now. And then they look at themselves like, I've never had a body that, and then they start working out and doing everything they can, right, to get that back. And you cannot exercise away stretched out skin. You can't exercise away stretch marks. You can't diet away a muscle separation in your abs that's, 3-4 inches. You can't, exercise away that hernia that came from your pregnancy. Right? You can't exercise to have bigger breasts, like there's things that you cannot do. And so for me, what I've tried to put out there is the reality of like day-to-day plastic surgery is like, it's actually transforming people's lives and not just women, men. I mean, I've been posting about my own surgery. My partner, Dr. Garlic, did my lipo on my abdomen, and I'm doing that because I want people to see like guys do this too. And we don't talk about it a lot, you know, but really, like, we do all we can. We diet, we exercise, we work out. And it's like, you're going to have stubborn areas of fat. I tell people, it's like, you get this scarred fat and it's not going to go away. Scar tissue doesn't go away. Scarred fat, guess what? It doesn't go away no matter what you do. And that's what I was left with. I got to my goal weight last year and I was like, I still had this gut, this inner tube. And I know it. I do it every day. And I tell my patients that I'm like, like, I'm actually listen to what I do. And this is what I want for myself. And it was like one of the most confidence building things for me, in my own life. It was cool to experience that firsthand in the recovery, but I see it every day in my patients. And, 90% of my patients are women and they've had kids usually, but it's so cool. Like my favorite thing is to come into clinic on a Wednesday and a woman's, had their tummy tuck and their breasts, lifted and all that stuff. And they'll look in the mirror and just start crying. And it's like, oh my gosh. Or they'll be like, hey, like my back pain's gone. Like it's completely gone, And so I love talking about the functional benefits of these surgeries because it makes it real for people and it's not so glorified. It's like realistic.
No, I love what you're saying that, I grew up in many cases that was the perception that it was like, oh, the people who get plastic surgeries are the ones who are trying to change who they are into something that they're not.
And they're gaudy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and they're gaudy or they're like the whatever perception, and then as I've gotten older, I think that, and as you're saying, it's like no, it's that these people are trying to look in the mirror and see what they think they should,
Yes.
right, and that when they look in the mirror, they don't see themselves as the way that they would expect to see, which is just like a real change in mindset to be able to be like, oh, this is really trying to have that empathy and understanding for these patients and these people, is they like, no, like they look in the mirror and they don't see them. They're like, that's not me. That's not who I should be seeing, right? Which is to some degree, like, I think it's commendable to be able to be and good for you to be in a position to be like, you can provide this sort of confidence and self-worth that some of these people are missing out on, or that they feel like they can't have. I mean, it really is like can have a major effect on people's mental health.
Oh, it's unreal what it does for people, honestly. Like in a very good way, I think it's just overall just so awesome to see the benefits that people have from that. And it's like you said, they look in the mirror and they don't see themselves how they maybe they picture themselves, but it's also their body. You look at some of these posts, their bodies look 15 years younger after these surgeries. They look like they probably should actually look at their age. Their bodies have almost essentially aged faster than their actual chronological age because they've had kids so early. Their tissues have been destroyed.
Yeah.
And your body can't recover from that, And so now it's like, your weight's changed up and down, up and up and down, skin stretched out. And it's like, okay, this patient's 30 years old. Their body looks like they're 45, And so like, again, a lot of it's just for me, it's restoring their body. We're not trying to turn you into someone you're not. We're trying to turn you into someone who you were and you still are. You're just hiding under all that loose skin, stretched down muscle, deflated breasts, stubborn fat. That's all we're trying to do. And that's the majority of what I see. Now, sure, are people doing things for vanity? Yeah. But at the end of the day, like in my opinion, that's obviously a lot less of the percentage, but it's also like, who cares? Like if that's what someone wants to do, that's up to them.
Yeah.
Like that's not for us to judge. One thing I have seen in the culture here in Utah is there's even the last 4 years of doing social media, 4 or 5 years, is like just a much more of an acceptance of like, okay, yeah, if that person's doing that, great, or like, oh, like we're going to talk about this and we're going to talk about labiaplasty now. We don't talk about it a lot. It's like your labia gets stretched out and it can be uncomfortable even just walking. Women get infections. Yeah. It's chafing, like they're trying to do biking or exercise or intercourse is uncomfortable. Like those are functional problems, right? And like so now that we're talking about it, I think it's like I think it gets cultural, right? It's like, in the culture here in Utah, and I grew up here, as a teenager, it's like don't have intercourse before marriage, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's a religious component. I get that. But it's like it also suppresses just talking about sexuality or even these types of things because we kind of link them all together, right? If we talk about breasts, well, then we're talking about sexual things. We're talking about sex. So it's like, let's not talk about it. But I think now as, you see us growing up here in Utah and the culture evolving a little bit, we're able to talk about it. And do you have to get it? No. But at least we can have an open conversation, a mature conversation about it.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting you're bringing up some of those things that are like that there are consequences of your body changing that some people would just suppress the conversation and just think like, oh, well, when I ride my bike, this just sucks and I just have to deal with that. And the reality is no, you don't, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like, okay, this is on a much basic level.
Yeah.
And again, at the end of the day, sure, if people want to do it or not, that's totally up to them. I'm not here to force anything. But if I had ears full of earwax, I could not hear you guys, right? Full of earwax, there's a simple solution. Let's say we take the earwax out. We're like, nope, my body's made this way. The wax is there. It's meant to be there. It's like, no, I can literally help you.
Right.
If you want to hear better, right? I can just
fix it.
I have a little, like it's on a basic level, right? That's what I'm saying. But like if someone's like, oh man, like I have women who literally cannot sit up out of their bed in the morning. They're in their late 20s, okay? And their muscles are so separated from having had, 5, 6 kids that young. They can't get up out of bed. And you can't tell me that, like, if there's a fix or a help for that you're going to deny that person just because, like, oh, no, it's got to be this way, and I get and I love, like, body positivity and, about yourself. That's what that's literally what I'm all about.
Right.
But, like, and if you don't want the surgeon said, great. But if I could tell you, like, hey, like, functionally, even if you don't care about the outward aesthetic, the look, I could potentially help you with that, where you could actually sit up in bed on your own. That sounds like such a basic thing, but it can happen. Or like, next time if you're laughing or you sneeze and you pee a little bit, we might be able to help that functionally, it's like, why not?
Yeah.
You know?
It's taking the earwax out of the ear.
Yeah.
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 Take it out.
I feel like there's a lot of things that come with after pregnancy that people just don't know or understand on the impacts that it has on women's bodies.
And the real talk, I think, to that too is that in many cases, people financially have to address it via insurance, and we know how big of a deal insurance is of the things that they decide what they do and do not cover, and
some of the stuff
that's a whole
That's a whole
totally.
podcast.
The one thing I do hear from people is like, and I think of this myself in my own business. Like, I think some of the biggest risks I've taken in investments have been on myself, but it's paid its own dividends. And I talk to, patients about this, and I get it. Yeah, there's always a financial component, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, you can invest in yourself too, and it's okay. Like you invest in your kids, you feed them, you send them to school, you do all these things. And parents just become very selfless, right? It's like, well, the last person I'm going to feed is myself. The last person I'm going to buy clothes for is myself.
Right.
But it's like, what that does for your mental psyche when you take care of yourself and you invest in yourself, like I see what it does for people, and it's incredible. Just the value and the confidence that can bring to a human being like that. I don't think you can put a value on that,
Yeah.
But I get that. And so a lot of people do try to go through insurance for certain things, and that's great. Like we want to work with people, but the reality is insurance also dictates what we're allowed to do.
Right.
And so I have stopped doing insurance a while ago because I was doing, let's say, breast reductions, and they would tell me how much weight I'd have to take off from their breasts. I'd send them in the photos, I send them in the patient's height and weight, and they say, okay, based off this, you have to take off this much weight. And if you don't, the patient pays in full cash to you because we're not going to cover it. So now I'm forced to do what a business is telling me to do. But some patients, I'm like, if I do this, you're going to end up with no breasts. Like you're literally going to have like mosquito bites. And you have big breasts now. And the patient's like, well, but I just can't afford it, and I have back pain. So I'm like, okay. And then I remember when I was in training in California, there's this young girl, it was, through insurance at the county hospital. We did exactly the amount the insurance told us to do. Cause I'm like, I knew it was going to be a lot of tissue. And I remember she came in at her follow-up the next day, and she was crying in the mirror. She's like, they're just so small. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, like we had to. And we had told her ahead of time, but to see it, it's just, I just watched this young girl. She was just devastated, And I'm like, why do I have to do surgery that's dictated by people who have no idea what doing?
They're talking about?
Yeah, right. It's like, it's like if I went to McDonald's and told them how to make a Big Mac, I have no idea how to do that. Like I have no authority over that, but they're just going to dictate what you do. It makes no sense.
Yeah, well, that's a whole separate problem.
We can go to the insurance route.
We don't need
Do we have another hour? No, no, just kidding. But yeah, let's not get into that.
Let's not. We'll move on.
What's a typical price range that someone could expect if like someone's watching this and like, I've never thought about plastic surgery. This Chiddy guy has made me want to look into it. Is it like $2,000 or is it like $100,000? Like what's kind of the range? And I know that there's a variety of factors, right? The lift, the full mommy takeover, whatever. What's kind of your...
Yeah, I think, so if we just go, what I see, what Dr. Private, what we all see is mommy takeovers, right? Mommy makeovers. So that typically includes 5 or 6 surgeries though. So that's like, we're talking breast lift, breast augmentation of some sort, liposuction, and a tummy tuck, right? And those are probably the main things that are included. And that can, again, vary because there's so many factors, but it probably starts around $15,000 and can go up to $50,000 to $60,000. But what we try to do, and that's in our practice, I mean, again, it can vary across the nation. I know tummy tucks in New York City are $70,000 just for a tummy tuck, right?
Yeah.
So it's really market dependent.
Yeah.
You go down to Florida, you're going to pay $3,000 for a home on makeover, and let's pray you make it home alive.
It's out of the back of a van by a person who is
go to board certified.
Board certified.
Yeah. No. There's good surgeons down there. Just go to the right ones. But yeah, so that's kind of, I would say, the overall range, but it really can vary. And at our practice, we offer a bunch of really good financing options. Sometimes we stage surgeries if that's the way to do it. Some people pay ahead of time. Like for me, like I have a lot of patients that are like, oh, I'm waiting another year for after my consult for surgery. So they'll start paying, kind of in installments here and there. So by the time they have surgery, like everything's good to go. So there's definitely options that way, but we really try to include everything. So when I give that number, that's not including literally like all the garments, all the lotions, the complementary laser treatments. That includes the implants, all the materials, the facility fees, the anesthesia, everything. There's no like hidden fees, or it's like you come back and like, oh, by the way, here's this. Yeah. That's everything, And a lot of people, there are some people that are just very like shady about that. It's like, well, this is the price, right? They get you in the door and they're like, oh, but actually, and then they tack on another 5,000.
Mhm.
Here's an admin fee of $5
Yes.
grand. It's like, what is that?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just make sure you obviously get the full pricing wherever you go and say, is there anything else that I need to know about?
Yeah.
Oh, is that? I guess to add to that too, like if someone's looking for, aside from like board certified and
Mhm.
making sure we're getting the prices, like what other kind of things you advise somebody to say when looking for a surgeon?
I think it's good if you know anyone who's been to that surgeon.
Mm.
You know, it's good to hear like in-person like reviews, maybe of what the experience they had, right? I think that's helpful. Because the best patients, I think, well, not best, but like the ones that are probably the best experience and are like are ready to go is like they had a friend who came or two
Mhm.
friends. They were like a referral from someone and they're excited, and then it's just easier for them because they feel like they are fully informed. Because even reviews sometimes, like I look like some people even pay for reviews. I've never paid for
Yeah.
reviews, but
Yeah.
it could be a little like if you just try to go off like Google reviews, it may not be the best thing
Sure.
either. I mean, maybe it's helpful, but I think it's just one small aspect. Right? You can look at all those things, but I'm just saying like I would look at several different things. The other thing to look for is if that surgeon. Now you asked them in a consultation, but does that surgeon have hospital privileges like I mentioned earlier? So
Right.
like I used to do this all the time on Instagram and say, okay, here's some 5 questions to ask your surgeon at the consult. And one of them I would say is, yeah, you're board certified. But the next one is like, okay, if there's a complication, like what's your plan? Like, okay, if I need a revision, what's the plan? Like we include a cosmetic insurance for all of our cases. So that's, again, bundling your price. So if there were something that happened, let's say you, I don't know, like unfortunately you got a hematoma, you reached, across the bedstand one night, you felt something in your chest and it starts bleeding. It's super rare, but if that happens, we rush to the hospital or we clean it out, right? And so that's type of stuff's covered. I don't know, so all these things we try to help with, but ask if there's a complication, where are they going to be taken? Because they may say, well, I don't have privileges. And you're like, well, who's going to take care of me then?
Yeah.
So you got to know those things.
It's amazing. Just talking about the confidence. My wife, she has like a countdown timer to her surgery day, and she's like,
congrats.
hey, 120 days until my surgery. 119 days. So she's super, super excited. I don't want to say unfortunately, but not with you, with Pfeiffer, one of your other surgeons, but he's awesome. The waitlist for Chiddy is like 3 years just for a consult.
So let's get to that. I mean, we're kind of getting close to the end of the
we are getting
so if there is a wait list, that's good. So if you want any sort of plugs or any sort of information about your thing, so people can get information and get on the list or whatever, if they want to find out more about you or
it's to the point where I don't ever ask about it anymore. My staff, I'm just like, look, it gives me angina thinking about it.
Sorry to bring it up.
No, I would love to like help everyone, and that's why I've hired 3 other surgeons, and they're awesome. Like I literally handpicked them. So, we want everyone to have that 5-star hotel concierge experience from beginning to end. We're always trying to improve, but if you want that experience, and maybe the surgical experience is not directly with me, but my other partners, they're amazing, and you'll get that same experience overall. Right. And I think you'll get excellent results with them. So I would say I would call or text our office is 801-839-5557 if you have questions about specific pricing. Well, we won't give you an exact quote over the phone because again, there's a lot of customization that happens when you get your consult, but at your consult you will receive the exact quote for everything in surgery. But if you want price ranges, you can text or call us. If you go to our website, mine's drchiddy.com. My Instagram is Dr. Chiddy. My TikTok's Dr. Chiddy. YouTube's Dr. Chiddy. So it's pretty easy to find me there. But we also have our website, theplasticsclinic.com. And then you can look up at my partners, Dr. Pfeiffer, P-Y-F-E-R, Dr. Garlick, G-A-R-L-I-C-K, and Dr. Brent Robinson, Brent.Robinson. So if you want to look them up in their work, you can see them on Instagram. And, in the end of the day, I think it's like, all these things are on there online, but really it's like finding a personality that also fits you, right?
Yeah.
So, I think some people compromise like, well, I really want to go to that doctor, but I think he's weird. He dances, but I really want that belly button.
Yeah.
So it's like, they'll put up with it, but you shouldn't put up with it. Just like I talked about earlier, like, putting up with a culture that just doesn't feel like it's yours, eventually you're going to be like, this is not for me. So like if that person doesn't fit your personality and you feel like it's just not a good fit, then don't force yourself. And I feel the same way about patients. Like if we feel like I don't click, I know patients sometimes wait 2 years. We're like, it doesn't click. I don't feel this is going to be good. Then I'll refer them to one of my partners or somebody else because I still want them to be taken care of.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, do what's safest and best for you.
Great. And then other services you offer at your clinic as well?
Yeah, so we have our clinic side, all the surgical, but then we have our whole med spa. Our med spa is beautiful. We literally offer all the lasers, all the facials, all the microneedling, all the Botox, filler injections. We have awesome nursing injector staff. Shannon and Helen are our nurse injectors. We have a whole team of estheticians. We have actually lymphatic massage. So after your surgery, you get massage. So your wife can get that too. Emily and Kobe. We have the full complement of the med spa too. And it's unique in the way that there's not a lot of medical spas that are run by plastic surgeons who are in aesthetics. You know, a lot of times they're run by internal medicine doctors and different people in different specialties. But really what we're trying to offer is the full spectrum of aesthetic plastic surgery and so invasive and non-invasive plastic surgery. So, and I think we can deliver on that. So we're never going to recommend anyone like, you know, if you have a hammer and everything looks like a nail, right? You're gonna,
Yeah.
But I feel like we have all the tools, so we're not going to force a treatment on you that there may be a better treatment for you. You know, some places you go and they're like, well, they don't offer liposuction, so it's like, well, you got to do cool sculpting. You know, you got to do 20 rounds of cool sculpting. It's going to cost you $40,000, but you're going to do this, right? So we want to offer you what's most economical for you and give you the result that you want.
Okay.
Love it.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, Dr. Chiddy, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Guys. So
Cool.
good. It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.